Hey ambitious professionals, it's Linda Raynier of lindaraynier.com, guiding you to a career and life you'll truly enjoy. So if you have an interview coming up or several coming up, or you've had them in the past and you found yourself being extremely nervous for your interviews and you're struggling in this area, then today's video is for you, because I'm going to walk you through my best 5 tips on how to not be nervous for interviews so that you can interview with confidence and ease. Let's get started. Now, as a career strategist, I have had the honor of being able to help numerous corporate ambitious professionals just like you to land their dream job offers. And so if this is something that you're interested in working with me one-on-one, I can give you details about that at the end of this video. I understand that interviews are nerve-wracking. It's not really natural for us to just sit in a small room or over video call to be answering specific questions and then having to show ourselves in a certain way, in a certain light, knowing that the way we perform is actually going to determine whether or not we get the elusive job offer that we really want. So you may find yourself as someone who gets extremely nervous for interviews. Maybe you trip over your words. Maybe you're someone who forgets what you're going to say. You freeze up, or you end up rambling. And those are all signs that you're nervous in the interview. And the worst thing about being nervous in an interview is if you show it. If you show that you're too nervous and that you can't gain composure, unfortunately, that shows to the hiring manager that maybe they need to dock a few points because you're not able to maintain some self-control. So I get it. Interviews are nerve-wracking, but today what I want to do is share with you my best 5 tips on how to get yourself into a different state of mind for your interviews so that when you go for those interviews, you can sound more confident, feel more at ease, and feel more secure in what you have to say and what you have to do in order to get the job. Tip number 1, make yourself comfortable in the space before the interview. Now this tip is applicable whether you are doing a video call interview, which is more likely the scenario these days, or you're doing an in-person interview in a specific room at the company site. So what I'm trying to say here is that when you get into the building, if it's an in-person interview, you want to make yourself comfortable. You want to fill yourself up with a sense of ease, meaning be present wherever you're at. If you're in the waiting room waiting to be placed into the interview room, then sit there and breathe and get connected to the space and get yourself grounded. That's what I mean by making yourself comfortable in the space. Then when you move on into the interview room, you want to feel yourself sitting down, sitting in the chair, and breathing. The likely scenario is that you're going to be brought into the room before the interviewer comes in, so you want to get yourself settled in the space. Don't get yourself lost in your mind before an interview, because that's where you end up rambling, you end up forgetting what you have to say, and then all of a sudden the interview just doesn't go well. Now, if the interview is going to be over video call, for example, if it's going to be over Skype or Zoom or Google Hangouts or some other video calling platform, then that's even better. You have an advantage in that sense where you get to set up the space that you plan to do your interview. So if it's in your home office, if it's against a certain wall, in a place in your home that's quiet, sit in that space a day or two before the interview and get yourself centered and connected and visualize yourself doing well in the interview in that particular space. Because what this does is it sets your energy and it creates an expectation on yourself, on your body, to do as you intend, which is to do well. So you want to get yourself calm, get yourself centered, and get yourself comfortable in the space of where you're going to be interviewing. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2 is to prepare your stories and responses in advance. Now, I just realized that my tips are a little bit out of order. Some things you would have to do before you do other tips. So this tip in particular, tip number 2, is something that you would actually do before you even get yourself comfortable in the space. So when it comes to preparing for interviews, one thing that so many ambitious professionals I find make the mistake of doing is that they don't prepare stories. They don't prepare their responses in advance. They assume, and maybe you make this mistake, you assume that you just have to go into the interview, the interviewer asks you questions, whether it's the recruiter or the hiring manager, and you just have to answer. You just feel like it's just going to be a conversation. I'll just figure it out on the spot. And that's the last thing you want. You do not want to feel unprepared. Imagine they ask you, what do you know about us as a company? If you didn't prepare your answer, if you didn't do research, if you didn't structure out what you're going to say for that specific question, how do you expect yourself to perform on the spot while you're feeling nervous in the interview? This is a reason why you're nervous, is because you're unprepared. So what you really want to focus on is making sure that you fully know what examples, stories, achievements, and responses you're going to have for the most common questions that come up in interviews. Now, if this is an area that you really struggle with, I highly recommend that you visit my website and sign up for my free interview strategy workshop. The link is right here down below, and it's also in the description box. It's completely free. Take a watch of it, take some notes, and really learn how you can improve in your interviews from that perspective. Because if you do not prepare, like I said, in advance, you will feel nervous. And then in the interview, can you imagine trying to pull answers from thin air? You're not going to be able to. Your responses are going to sound like you're making things up. You're going to ramble, or you're going to freeze up completely and nothing will come out. So you really want to work on preparing those responses in advance. Tip number 3 is to practice your answers on camera beforehand. Now, I say practice your answers on camera specifically if you are going to be doing a video call interview. Then you really want to be able to look at yourself in your own laptop and see how you look while you're giving your answers and responses. Now, if it's going to be an in-person interview, then you can practice in front of the mirror. You don't necessarily have to look at yourself on a camera, but either way, either one works. What's really important here is that you practice. Practice, practice, practice. So many people do not practice their answers. You really have to take it seriously. It almost is like going to school all over again, where you're practicing for a presentation. You know that in order to do well for your presentation, you need to know exactly what you're going to say, you have an idea of it, and then you'll feel more at ease when you're standing in front of the classroom. The same goes here for preparing for an interview. You have to look at it as almost a sales pitch or a sales presentation, where you are selling yourself. You're the product. You're marketing yourself. And so if you're going to do a marketing pitch to someone, you do not want to do it off the cuff, winging it, and making things up on the spot. That's not going to make you look good, and you're not going to feel good, especially because you're likely going to forget certain things that you wanted to mention, and it's not going to be cohesive, it's not going to be articulate, it's likely just going to be a jumble of things rambled together, and way too much information is going to be spilled to the hiring manager. So what you want to do is prepare your answers in advance, like I said earlier, but then you want to practice them. The way to practice is to have the mirror or have the video call set up, press record, and actually pretend as if you're being asked the questions and answer them. Answer them, then after you're done, stop the record button and rewatch yourself. Identify areas where you could have improved. Look at yourself from a different perspective. Don't look at yourself as yourself. Look at yourself as if you were the hiring manager and what you would critique that person. So you have to really put on a critical mask and critical goggles, whatever you call them, and be able to analyze yourself and ask yourself, would I hire this person if I was the hiring manager? The more critical you can be, but not in a mean way, just the more analytical and critical you can be of yourself, the better your answers will sound, the better you'll be able to improve, the faster you'll be able to improve, and hopefully the more confident and less nervous you're going to sound and feel in the interview. Tip number 4, focus on them, not on you. So this tip is applicable specifically when you're right in the interview. The biggest reason why most of us get nervous is because our minds are turned around and focused on us. You're focused on yourself too much. You're criticizing yourself too much. You're judging yourself too much on the spot, rather than focusing it outwards onto the hiring manager. You need to focus on them. You need to make sure that what you're delivering lands on their side in the right way. So essentially you have to think of yourself as you're throwing a ball over the other side of the net. You want to make sure that it stays in the court. You want to make sure that they're able to catch that ball that you're delivering or throwing over there, and they're able to understand it and they're able to take it and appreciate it. You want them to appreciate what you're delivering. But if you're focused on yourself and you're criticizing yourself and you're saying, oh gosh, this is not going well, you're filling yourself up with all these thoughts, guess what? You're not doing a great enough job. All that energy is spent on you and not focusing on doing a great job on delivering what you need to deliver to the hiring manager. So shift your focus away from you. Shift your focus onto making sure that every word and every sentence that comes out of your mouth is being delivered nicely and landing nicely with the hiring manager, who is either on the other side of the screen or on the other side of the table across from you. And finally, tip number 5, dress the part. Now this may sound obvious, but the way we look impacts the way we feel. So if you know that going into the interview, you're going to be putting on your best suit or your best blazer, your best outfit that will show a very professional image, at least the one that the hiring manager is looking for, you are going to feel more confident. So just make sure that you prepare for that and that you look your best. Groom yourself, comb your hair, do whatever you need to do to look and feel sharp, because that will hopefully give you some ease as well and make you feel more confident, especially if it's an interview where you know that they're looking for a very specific caliber of individual. You just want to cover your bases and look the part. That's the most basic tip I can give, is look the part, and then everything else comes from the previous 4 tips, which is to sound and act the part as well. So there you have it. Those are my 5 tips on how to not be nervous for interviews. Hopefully those help you. Let me know in the comments if any of those do. And if you're someone who's currently on the job hunt, you've been going for some interviews, you haven't been getting great results, and you realize that you need more one-on-one professional guidance from someone like myself, then feel free to reach out. Head on over to my website, lindaraynier.com/standoutgethired. Read through the page, fill in the application form, and from there, if it seems like we're a match, one of my team members will reach out to you directly. We also have other resources that are free and available to you. Like I mentioned earlier, there's my free interview strategy workshop. The link is in the description box down below. But I also have a free resume mastery workshop. If you find yourself not getting called for enough interviews and you want to work on your resume, definitely check out this workshop. Like I said, it's completely free. Take whatever tips you can from it, and hopefully that'll help you to improve. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.